starting the day off with a clean complex, a couple powers, a couple fulls. So instead of 4, I'm just going to work up to my heaviest set. So 2 powers, 2 full cleans. I'll be pretty happy if I can hit 150 kilos today. Then I got back squats, working up to a top set of 5, followed by some back offsets. I'll be happy if I can hit like 505, 510 for that top set of 5. Close grip bench and some Nordic hamstring curls. I haven't done Nordic hamstring curls very much at all in the last like year. When I was at my peak, I could hit a set of 10 on the Nordic hamstring curls, but I'm gonna get out the Nordic sidekick machine or sled from my friend Kyle Casillas that I bought from him. I'm gonna do 3 sets of 5, see if I can get a couple full reps today. I got one thing on my mind that I want to talk about, and I saw a clip from Jay DeMayo on Instagram, and I've met Jay DeMayo before. I've been on his podcast before. I think he's a really good dude, but he said something about how like he said I'll get into this deeper, but he said we, referring to strength and conditioning professionals, focus too much on emphasizing strength and not enough on movement, and then a bunch of the comments were like agreeing with him. And I don't know, there's like this weird phenomenon where somebody says something that like, I don't know if he's not trying to be controversial at all, but he makes an opinion almost like critiquing the industry or critiquing the field, but then everybody agrees with him. So then like, I don't know, it's weird. I'm going to get into it more. I set at 140 here. Decent set, I'll go for 150 next. Is there any specific reason why, when doing power cleans or below the knee power cleans, one jumps forward? Yeah, there could be a few different reasons for that. I think probably the most common one would be, and these are like kind of, there's two of them I would think of, and they're kind of linked. But one would just be like not finishing your pull, so you're making contact with the bar on your lower thigh. You're not really fully extending the knee, so you end up having to like chase the bar forward. The other thing would be, if your first pull is poor, so your first pull, you're changing your back angle, you're raising your butt up faster than your shoulders on the bar, so you end up looking like this. So you end up, instead of raising the bar, hips, and your shoulder simultaneously, you're probably ending up pulling like this, so your back angle changes. So you're raising your hips, but the bar's not going much, your bar's not really going anywhere. So then your butt comes up, the bar hasn't moved too much, and now you kind of have to loop it, and you're kind of chasing the bar forward. So that'd be my guess. The way to fix it, I would just use like a constraints-based kind of approach. I'd probably put a couple of plates in front of your feet and say, don't step on the plates, or put a PVC pipe 2 inches in front of your feet and say, don't jump onto the PVC pipe because you'll roll your ankle, things like that. That'd probably be my approach, and then you just like allow yourself to kind of self-organize and fix that deficiency. How's the new gig? Miss S&C at all? I miss some of the strength and conditioning stuff. I miss just being around like athletics, I guess, in general, but the lifestyle I have with my new job is way better than having to be on campus at 5:30 in the morning and then having these big gaps between groups. But yeah, I do miss like the athletic environment and hanging out with good athletes. How much does age impact progress? I'm 64 years old, 5'7", 255-pound deadlift, 165-pound back squat, 155-pound bench press. Yeah, I don't know what your background is, but age is definitely a factor. Your ability to recover when you're older is a lot more challenging. I think you just have to really focus on doing everything right and appropriately dosing all of your exercises. But like how much does age impact it? I don't know. But I just know when I'm 64 years old, I probably am not going to be able to do everything I'm doing now at 31 years old. So eat the best you can, train as much as you can without overtraining. Yeah, I don't know. I've kind of talked about this before, but yeah, age is definitely a factor in progress. All right, 150 here, 2 powers, 2 fulls, probably gonna be my last set. I probably have a little bit more in me, but I'm going to cut it there and just get to my squatting here. This is going to be a hard set of 5. Time to hunker down. So I want to talk about the Jay DeMayo thing that I was referring to earlier. So he was on, I think he was on some podcast. I don't know. I just saw the clip on Instagram. So like full transparency, I haven't listened to the full podcast, whatever it was. But basically, I'm going to play the clip right here, actually, just so you can see it.
I think we rely too much on just continually improving max strength and not enough on teaching the body to move efficiently. Listen, we lift 4 to 6 days a week all year, even in season. I'll probably have 2/3 of my team, 1/3 to 2/3 of my team that'll lift on game day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying we don't lift weights. I'm not saying you shouldn't lift weights. I'm not saying you shouldn't lift heavy stuff. I'm not saying that there isn't a time, a place, and a value to it. I'm just saying we might do it a little too much. You know, like everybody that's listening to this probably knows like that I'm the 1x20 guy. Like,
yeah,
I've got a dude who's 6'11", 260 pounds, who can trap bar deadlift 405 for 20 reps.
Oh my
I
Lord.
don't think he needs to get much stronger than that. You know, like what else do you need to do?
So basically his point is that he says we, which is really a big pet peeve of mine. It's a big pet peeve of mine when people use the term we, but they're not referring to themselves among the group that they're talking about. That's just like a side note. It's like we, the word we means me and other people. But when people say the word we, but they're referring to a group and they're not including themselves in the group, it's just a pet peeve of mine. That's just a side note. People do it all the time. It really annoys me. But anyways, he works for, I think, the University of Richmond. So I'm assuming he's talking about like we as in collegiate strength and conditioning coaches overvalue or overemphasize strength and strength training in comparison to other physical qualities, such as in the clip he says like movement ability, I think is what he says, or the ability to teach movement, overvaluing strength over things like speed, power, all these other physical qualities that are components of athleticism or physical preparation, endurance, anaerobic capacity, anaerobic threshold. There's so many physical qualities that are a part of physical preparation and athleticism. And yeah, the point of what he's saying, I think, is just so untrue. Like the sentiment that he represents in that clip is much more prevalent than the opposing sentiment of we need to lift more, we need to focus more on strength training, we need to lift heavier weights. Like his position is way more prevalent in current college strength and conditioning. The reason I know this is because I go to the CSCCA conference. I'm going to go to the NSCA conference. I listen to podcasts. You go read articles on like Simply Faster or other websites. The sentiment that Jay is proposing, that we need to value other things over strength, is way more common than the sentiment of we need to value strength over other things. And I think it's really odd. Like, I don't understand how he can say that on a podcast. And again, I have no problem with Jay. I've been on his podcast. I think he's a really good dude. I think he's an honest guy. So this is like, I'm not throwing shade at Jay DeMayo here, but go to the comments and everybody's agreeing with him. And I didn't click on all the profiles of everyone agreeing with him, but I'm assuming that most of the audience of that podcast are other strength and conditioning professionals. And it's just like, I don't understand how you can make this critique of strength and conditioning And then everybody's like agreeing with you when you're saying that we overvalue strength and we don't value movement ability. We don't value other physical qualities as much as strength. Like it doesn't really make sense to me. How do you square that circle? If you're critiquing this thing that you're a part of and everyone else who's also a part of this thing is in agreement with you. You know what I mean? I guess it doesn't really make sense to me. Sorry, I'm not like in a headspace to really articulate this very well, but it doesn't make sense to me. Because if you're recognizing this problem and other people are also recognizing this problem and they're all in agreement that we do this too much, then change it and then you won't recognize the same problem. So I don't know. It's just a really interesting phenomenon to me how people can like make these statements of critiquing the field that they're in. Also like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, saying that they're sort of a part of it, but they're not really because look at what I'm doing something different. And then all these other people are jumping in to agree with you and pat you on the back for making this bold statement of like standing up to the man. And it's like, that just isn't true, man. It's just not true. Anyways, I'm going to do the back off sets of back squats. I might elaborate this if I have like more thoughts on it between sets. In fact, I would actually probably make an argument in the opposite direction. I think among college strength and conditioning, I mean, I only see what I see on Instagram and when I go to the CSCCA or NSCA conference and I talk to people there. But like, I think I think modern American collegiate strength conditioning has gotten away from strength, like real good strength training so much. So many programs don't barbell back squat. So many programs don't deadlift. So many programs don't do the Olympic lifts. And they would rather fill in their strength bucket with like unilateral, gimmicky type strength training that doesn't actually offer an adequate strength stimulus to develop true neuromuscular strength in an effective way. I've said it before, and I think the reason is because so many strength and conditioning coaches want to like please the athletic trainers they work with. They want to please the sport coaches that they work with. They want to be able to say, hey, I'm not just a meathead that just does barbell strength training. Even though I'm a strength and conditioning coach, I'm not a strength coach. I'm a sports performance coach. So they get away from that stuff because I think they're trying to offer up this perception that they're more well-rounded than they really are. And I don't mean that as an insult, but like if you're a strength coach, if you're a strength and conditioning coach, obviously there's other facets to athleticism and physical preparedness than strength and conditioning. There's other physical qualities that you want to develop, but your job is to strengthen, your job is to condition athletes, your job is to build up physical qualities. I just think like modern college American strength and conditioning has gone away from like real understanding of how valuable strength training can be. I know this isn't like real hard, solid evidence here, but like look at the reputation of Mark Rippetoe among college strength and conditioning coaches. People think he's a clown, and Mark Rippetoe is like probably the most strawman person I've ever seen in the fitness community. He says like basic factual things, and people want to strawman him and take what he says and put it into context that he's not putting them in to make him sound bad. Anyways, sorry, that's just my little rant here. This brings me back to the previous question about do I miss strength and conditioning? How's my new job? Do I miss strength and conditioning? I'll tell you what I really don't miss is, and I talked about this with Alan Thrall, when you're a collegiate athlete, you have obligations. Those obligations are go to practice, go to class, go to film, go to meetings. You have academic responsibilities. You have community service, volunteership obligations. Another one of your obligations is strength and conditioning. And none of these student athletes, none of the sport coaches would ever try to influence any of those other obligations outside of practice. None of them would try to influence an academic meeting. None of them would try to influence the community service stuff. None of them would try to influence any of that. Strength training or strength and conditioning is an obligation for these athletes. It needs to be treated like an obligation, but so often you have so many outside influences that want to influence what happens in the weight room and in their training sessions. And it's just like mind-blowing to me, the amount of strength and conditioning coaches that will just concede and they'll just concede their value, they'll concede their principles because they want to appear to be like on board with what the team wants to do instead of just like delivering effective strength and conditioning programs to their athletes. I think it's insane, man. It's like the amount of excuses that I saw with the football team at UND where someone would misbehave in the weight room, or they would misbehave in the weight room, they would act out, they would act in a defiant manner. Then there would just be an excuse from their position coach or the head coach of why they're not doing what they're supposed to do in there. And it's like, if someone acted out in an academic meeting, you wouldn't go to the academic advisor and say, well, actually, this is the way you should be approaching this kid. This is the way you should be approaching this meeting. It's insane. I do not miss that. I'll tell you that much. Two sets of 10 here on the close grip incline, 225 on the bar. Last thing on the J DeMeo slip, I swear this is my last thing. I just want to make one quick point here. This is why I think it's important to like call people's names out. It's not to be disrespectful, but when you make these critiques, these kind of like broad critiques, nobody knows who you're talking about. At least I don't necessarily know who they're talking about. So I can't necessarily for sure know if I agree or disagree with the statement. So like, that's why I will call out someone's name like Schmarzo, or like, if I'm going to critique an idea or critique something, I want people to at least know who I'm referring to so that they can go and look at that person and see if they have the same critique or not. But if you just make these broad sweeping kind of critiques, then like, I don't know who Jay's talking about. Who focuses, or what strength and conditioning program emphasizes strength more than they should? Like, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's probably more in the opposite direction. But anyways, that's my last thought on the topic. Will, can you do a muscle up? I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. Do you think sprinting on curved treadmills can be a substitute if you can't access a track or some turf? Yeah, I mean, if that's what you got to use, that's what you got to use. I wouldn't say it's substitute, but it's probably the closest thing you can get without actually going on a track or turf. So if you don't have access to a track or turf, but you have that treadmill, go and use it, man. What do I think about Dan John's Easy Strength? Dan John's Easy Strength is a great program, great book. I recommend everybody read it. When I just got cut from Atlanta, before I got picked up by Kansas City, I ran Dan John's Easy Strength because it's high frequency, low volume, low workload. I really think, if I remember right, it's just one top set of every exercise, but your top set should be an exercise that you perform confidently, so it doesn't really fatigue you at all. So yeah, go ahead and run Easy Strength. Read the book too. It's a good book. How do you deem athletes as being better prepared for the sport? Yeah, that's a good question. Like, you can't quantify it. You really can't quantify it, and it really just comes down to, I don't want to say common sense, but just using your best sense. We have faculties of reason at our disposal. We can use it. We can analyze movement. We can analyze the stimulus that's being placed on the organism, and how that's going to affect their preparedness to do another task that may or may not necessarily be directly related to the movement that they're training. Yeah, you just got to use sense. Like, I always think I think it's odd. I get the pushback from some people about how I'll admit that you can't quantify everything about an Olympic lift, but you can just use sense, and you can analyze the movement qualitatively, because that's what you have to do. You can look at what the movement is of a clean or a snatch or a jerk, and then you can look at that, you can analyze it, and you can see exactly how it's going to prepare an athlete for a sport like football or basketball or hockey, being put in compromising positions, having to get in and out of deep ranges of motion, under duress, at high speeds, under loads. You can't necessarily quantify that either, but you can't necessarily quantify how whatever medicine ball throw you want to do, how that's going to directly transfer, what the dynamic correspondence of that is to sport. Like, I think Fred Duncan talked about how there's direct transfer, there's tertiary transfer, and there's peripheral transfer. that's made up too. That's just as arbitrary. You can't quantify any of that. So like, it's odd that I get the pushback that I do about being a proponent of the Olympic lifts and saying that they do have some transferability to sport, but that's only because I'm operating within the framework of accepting dynamic correspondence as a legitimate idea in the first place. But I'll get the pushback that you can't quantify everything about an Olympic lift, but which is true, but you can't quantify how your, I'm trying to think of an exercise here. Mike Godango will do his overspeed, high load, fast reps, belt squats with more load and more force. I just think it's odd. I think the people who push back on my analysis of the Olympic lifts just kind of obfuscate their own positions because they can't quantify that shit either. So anyways, yeah. And last thing of the day, some Nordic hamstring curls. Been a while since I've done these. Hopefully I don't cramp. I don't think I can do a full rep right now. I got to try to get at least one full rep here. Oh, nope. Not today. Need that boost. I'll get it back in like 2 weeks. That's all I got, guys. Thanks for watching.